Retail leadership is not for the faint of heart. It just really isn't. It requires you to have intent, purpose. You have to be driven. And if I could just be very honest with you, honestly, you have to outwork, you have to outlearn, and you have to out deliver those that are around you. And if you don't do that, you will be exposed. In my experience, I've seen a lot of leaders who have been exposed. I've seen a lot of leaders who have been stuck where they currently are. Well, I got to tell you what, I have a solution for you. Actually, I don't have the solution. Our guest has the solution. Brian Librach is a well-seasoned retail leader. You know, he goes all the way back to Chess King, Oak Tree. Those of you who know. Our conversation in this podcast episode talks about his amazing career, his zeal for leadership, his passion, his drive, and how that passion has translated into an amazing book. The title of the book is The Retail Leader's Roadmap. I'm telling you right now, and it comes out on March 12th. I'm telling you, you need to pick up your copy of this book. But until then, you got to check out this episode with Brian. We talk about so many things as it relates to retail leadership, his journey. We talk about his company, Well Wishers Company, that he and his wife have started. But more importantly, he provides a framework to help you become unstuck, a plan, a strategy to help you move forward, a plan to help you outwork, outlearn, and out-deliver those that are around you. So get ready for an amazing episode with my guest, Brian Librach. Let's get after it. I'm super excited to talk to you today, and you know, our initial conversation was long overdue, and it was quite interesting because, you know, you were talking a little bit about your dad and where you got started, and you threw up a couple of stores that just kind of like threw me back, you know, back into my teenage years. Before we get into the role that your dad played, for everybody, just tell everybody about Brian, and we're going to, of course, talk about the book. We're going to talk about the principles of your books. We're going to talk about all of that. So save some of that for everybody
Yeah.
else. So tell everybody a little about yourself.
No, yeah. No, I appreciate that, Steve. Yeah, chess game goes quite a ways back, huh, sir? I'm a retailer. I like to tell people I'm a retailer. It wasn't accidental. It was a choice of mine. My father was a retailer. Grandfather was a retailer. If you look up my last name in Google, you're going to find manufacturers and retailers dating back to the 1800s. So it's just in my blood. So I was privileged growing up to see my father corner office, VP, taking the Metro North train into the city every single day. So I knew what I wanted once I realized my baseball career wasn't going to pan out. And, started, focusing in on retail, started focusing in on my career at a very early age, started working when I was 12, paying taxes at an early age, primarily because my dad wouldn't pay for the Jordans that I wanted. So in order for me to get those Jordans, I had to earn a little bit extra on top of the Kmart prices that he was willing to fund. So yeah, started out that way, and 35 years later, achieved the corner office a couple different times, and now I'm looking to see how I can help other people achieve what their outcomes need to be.
Excellent. Hold on for a second. Did I hear baseball? I didn't.
Yeah, I
In
mean,
our
I
entire conversation, that never came up. So let's can we talk about that for a second? So talk about that part
yeah,
of
of course.
of what happened.
Here's what I'll tell you. I thought I was going to be a professional baseball player all the way until I was 15. And then when I turned 15, I got distracted by all kinds of stuff. And my baseball career was over at that point, and retail was number one. But what I will say is I learned probably some of the most valuable lessons in my retail career, in my life, in my leadership journey when I was like 10, 11, 12, playing baseball,
Mm,
just with
mm,
coaches. I got lucky
mm.
to have some really good coaches. Things like run to first base as hard as you can, regardless. Like simple
Yep.
little things, that just stick with you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's fun watching my 10-year-old go through it now. So, no, my baseball
Yeah.
career ended at 15.
Yeah. Running out. That's what they used. That's when I played baseball. That's what my coaches was on. Run it out. Doesn't matter. It's a ground ball.
Exactly.
Run it out. I love that. All right. So I think the second place I wanted to start, and you sort of alluded to it, your dad, and the thing that when I talked about in the opening where you had mentioned Chess King, and for those who, here's the thing: if you are not initiated And if you don't know, like, I don't know how far you go back in retail. I just got to say that if you don't, if the word chess king or oak tree like does not ring a bell, I'm not particularly sure how far you go back in retail. I'm just saying. Talk a little bit about your
I'll
dad
do you one.
and the impact he's had
Yeah,
on
I'll
you.
do you one better on that before I
Yeah.
do that. So
Oh yeah.
I was with
Yeah.
Chesky when they got bought by Merry-Go-Round too. So I was a part of that whole thing
Merry
too.
go.
So
Come on. Come on. Come on.
oh, you gotta
I
love it.
love
All right,
that. I
so
love
yeah,
that. I
so
love that. I'm telling you, if you, okay, I'm not even gonna go there. We could, that's a whole nother show, man. That's a whole nother
that's
show.
a whole nother
Talk
show.
about your
Yep.
dad. Talk about your dad.
All right, so I call it living with my idol. I tell people all the time I was lucky enough to live and grow up with my idol. And I tell people like be careful to not have your idols be people that you don't get to engage with and interact with on a daily basis. Right? Movie stars, athletes, those kind of things. So I was lucky enough. I had a role model that set the example for me at an early age on how to be a husband, a father, and a hard worker. So I really want to pay that privilege forward. And that's what this book is about. That's what my career really has been about, is trying to figure out how to help folks that may not have been as privileged as I was in that sense to grow up in a household with a father like that, with an idol like that. And, he taught me from a very early age, you got to grind it out. You got to outwork folks, which is the absolute very first practice in my book. You got to outwork folks. So from an early age, I like to say, from the age I was able to sit at the dining room table with the family, I was learning about leadership and I was learning about careers and I was learning about how to progress because those were the conversations that we had.
Mm, mm. All right. Okay, I'm gonna go back to young Brian, right? And you're sitting at that table. I remember part of our initial conversation was around, college, and you were like, this wasn't for me, and your dad gave you some advice. Do you remember that piece of advice that he gave you? You were like, this
Yeah,
isn't for
yeah,
me.
yeah.
This isn't for me, and I want to do something else.
Well, I went to high school for 3 years. I graduated in 3 years, not because I was super smart, it's because I was creative and I took two Englishes my senior year, got enough credits. And so I was ready to go to college. I got my syllabus. I decided after getting my syllabus that it wasn't what I wanted to do because I realized it was going to impact my ability to earn during the holidays. Um, ADHD and instant gratification, all that fun stuff. That's me. So I talked to my father about it. I said, okay, here's the deal. Like you're an adult. At that point, I was 17. You choose what you want to do, but you better be where you want to be in 3 to 5.
Mm,
So you either go to school, graduate, you have your diploma, and you start working where you want to work, or you in 3 to 5 years be where you expect to be.
yeah.
And so I wanted to be a DM. It was plain and simple. I knew the route because I had seen my father ascend. So I knew district, regional, like head of stores, chief operating. Like I knew what the roles looked like. And so I had to work backwards and say, okay, if I want to be somewhere in 3 to 5 years, what do I have to do?
Mm,
And put together my own education. And the last chapter in the book around build your plan is retail university. And it talks about how you can in retail achieve success in any level, any role in 3 to 5 years. If you pay attention,
mm,
call it 365 days a year for 3 to 5 years, that's plenty of time
mm.
to become what I would say is close to an expert or at least best in class at what you do.
100%, 100%. It's almost. I liken it to. I love what you just said. I liken it to that idea around the 10,000 hour rule, right? We all heard, Malcolm Gladwell kind of talk about that whole idea around, 10,000 hours. It gets you, gets you to be, an expert because of the intensity of the industry and what we have to go through. One of the things that you often talk about is results stem from the right attitude. We're going to get into the book here in a second, and there's probably some parts of the book, but one of the things I enjoy is that almost every day. I think I almost say now. I'm saying almost every day, but every day I'll either go to Instagram and I'll see my man walking. I see this guy. If you haven't seen Brian, this is Brian right here walking and talking, and he's dropping some knowledge.
So, what are the 5 P's of performance in service to? Your goals, your expectations. I mean, you perform for a reason. You have an expectation. You have something you want to achieve. You need a system. You don't need a theory. You need an application.
Can I talk a little bit about that for a second? Like, when did that
Yeah.
start? And I got to tell you, I think a lot of people like myself, we start our day with listening to that. When did that start, and what was the inspiration behind that?
Yeah, it's funny because I don't run. Like, unless I was running from somebody, I don't run. And
Mm-hmm.
so during COVID, I was listening to a video, and Goggins got me off the couch. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
was watching one of his inspirational videos, cursing left and right, all that good stuff. And I just got up, and we were living at the shore in Jersey at the time. So I went to the boardwalk and I just ran. I think I made it a mile, and I was proud of myself. From that point forward, I just started running, and I wasn't posting anything. And then I decided when I was starting to write the book back in April, of last year, that I was going to start to share a bit more of what my journey was looking like and try to help some
Mm-hmm.
folks in the way that Goggins got me off the couch and got me running. I've always worked out. I like to say I pick things up and put them down, but I never did any kind of cardio. And if he could get me off the couch and get me running, what can I do for more folks in our field that are trying to achieve their success and put better food on the table for their families? And so I started the videos, and just started getting more comfortable with it. And, I would run for a mile, walk a quarter, run for a mile. And in those quarter mile walks is when I would kind of do my thing and try to share. And initially it was just very organic, and it still is
Mm-hmm.
organic in a
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's a bit more tied to trying to, obviously market the book and make sure people pick the book up, because I do believe it's going to help a ton of folks. But it motivates me as much as it hopefully motivates others. And the book and podcasts and things that I'm going to do next, I want it to be content that
Yeah.
helps. I kind of like to say, like, motivation lights the flame, but content is what's going to sustain it. And so my hope is that the videos help some people get up in the morning and get moving, but I want to deliver some content that can provide some quality results that are sustainable for folks.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so let's move and talk about the book. One other thing that we have in common, based on our conversation, was Jack Welch, right? We grew up in the age of leadership where bottom 10% gotta go, and how that really impacted I think us as a leader. When you think about your book, right, and the idea around the book, when did it start? When did it occur to you to say, you know what, hold for a second, I need to take all these things that I've learned and actually put it into a book?
It's interesting because I would say my very first year as a district manager, I was 21 years old,
Mm,
and I interacted with a general manager, and that general manager got promoted a year later. And that general manager had a real tough time. She
mm-hmm,
struggled mightily in her first couple of years, and it bothered me. And I realized back then that I was an example setter. People just followed my lead, and I just delivered, but I didn't know how to articulate it. I didn't
mm,
know how to explain it to people. And so that day I learned I had to start to operationalize things. I had to start to be able to articulate things in a way that I could pass on to others so that they could be successful when I wasn't around. So that was the beginning of the journey. And then I would say, again, back in April, when I started to write the book, probably about a year prior to that, I started to think about it. And mostly because I want to try to find a way to help the masses and not just individuals within one organization. I've worked for a couple of organizations, two, three actually, for extended periods of time, and I've enjoyed developing the talent within those organizations. But I believe that there are a tremendous amount of people right now today that are stuck in their careers outside
mm-hmm,
of the organizations that I chose to work for, and I want to be able to find ways to help them. And so this book is meant to hit the masses and really meant to help folks either start their career the
mm-hmm,
right way with that 3 to 5 kind of plan,
mm-hmm.
or get unstuck and rewrite that outcome. But yeah, I would say 30. I knew a long time ago this book was needed, and I just needed about 35 years of content building to put pen to paper.
Yeah, it's interesting how, when you think about everything that you've learned kind of throughout your career, and a lot of times it becomes muscle memory, right? When we are having conversations or we're interacting or we're engaging with with leadership teams, and we don't understand, or maybe we do to some degree, we understand the impact that we're currently having, and then when you start that book writing process, you're like, oh man, I didn't realize I was actually doing all of this. The title of the book is The Retail Leader's Roadmap, and you break down three strategies and three steps. And could you highlight the each one of them, and then kind of I want to talk about each one of them as we move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first pillar is build your character. The second pillar is build your connections, and the third pillar is build your plan. The first pillar is really about the character, right? It's about the hard skills. It's about your foundation. I liken it to, it's like the foundation of your home. You know, hurricane comes through, you want that home to stand on its own. You need a strong foundation. We talk about outworking. We talk about outlearning. We talk about being the example, being accountable, and being disciplined. And those five practices are the core of your foundation, the core of your character, and they set you up for success. I look at that as kind of your underclassmen years, kind of like that first and second freshman, sophomore year. You have to kind of take those classes to be able to take the next round. Build your connections is really where other people start to become a part of your success equation, right? You start developing talent, you have to enhance your communication, and you have to improve your influence skills. And those influence skills, I put at the very end because who cares if you can influence folks if you can't communicate well and if you can't develop folks, you're not going to be in a position to influence others. And then the last pillar is really build your plan. Now that you have to have a strong character and you have to have strong connections. Now you have to have a plan, right? And there's two real big sections in the build your plan that people are going to be able to take and put pen to paper on. 5 P's of performance, and that's how you win at your day job. And then the retail university, and that retail university is how you learn. I call it learn while you earn, right?
Mm,
You win your day job, that's how you earn money. And then while you're earning, you have to learn so that you can progress. Performance alone doesn't get you where you want to be. Performance and
mm,
potential does. And so you need to do both. You're always going to do more work on the day job because that's how you pay the bills.
mm.
But you have to take in the inputs. You can grow yourself so that you have more to offer to others.
Excellent, excellent. The foundational one, character. Can we talk about that one? Because I want to talk about all three as well. But I love that you start with character because what we tend to see, and I'm quite sure you've seen this throughout your career, is that when we start to see leaders who get into high intensity situations, one of the first things that we end up seeing is that the character starts to go out the window. We start to see decisions that are made not in the best interest of maybe the person that's in front of them, but maybe it's in the best interest of themselves. Um, how does one? This is a big question, right? But how did you go about? I'm gonna kind of personalize it instead of it being general. How did
Yeah.
you kind of personalize that that character perspective? What are some of the things that you have done to actually kind of cultivate that mentality? Because I'm quite sure I know you talk about it probably in the book as well, but I just wanted to get your perspective, on that aspect.
Yeah. I mean, I asked myself, whenever I was stuck in my career, why? Like, what
Mm,
was it?
mm,
And it was one of those five things I just mentioned. I wasn't working hard enough. I wasn't learning. I wasn't open to it. Right. I wasn't setting the right example. I wasn't being accountable, and I wasn't being disciplined. And so I knew that those were the things that were holding me back. And my father said from day one, like, you have to outwork. You want to put yourself in a position to be first, second, or third at all times. I refer to it as podium moments. Like, you
mm,
want to be at the podium all the time. And if you do and work on your character and you work on the five things I mentioned, you'll be at the podium regularly. Now, you might not be ready for next. You might not ever be good to get to next because you lack the connection piece, but you'll be at the podium at your day job on a regular
mm,
basis. And I like to refer to them as kind of like knock it off moments. Like, you should outwork folks. Like, it. Like, you should be learning, right? Like you may not want to, but you should. And when you're not setting an example, it's probably not the best thing for you. And when you're being a victim, you're not going to be able to take control of your own destiny. And when you're not disciplined, you're not going to do the things you're supposed to do. So I had to come to terms with that. And the accountability, which is the fourth pillar in that I'm sorry, the fourth practice in that first pillar,
mm,
to me is the linchpin. Yes, you have to work hard. Yes, you have to be open to learn. Yes, you have to set examples. But if I can't accept and embrace my own realities,
mm,
I can't figure anything out. So to
mm.
me, that's the linchpin. And so I have to accept and embrace when I'm not working hard enough and start doing it.
Yeah, I
Right.
love
Like,
that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
character stuff doesn't, yeah, I was just gonna say, like, character stuff kind of doesn't need to be developed. It needs to be recognized.
Mm,
And so my hope is
mm,
in this book, I can clearly spell out, like, here's the five things you have to do.
mm-hmm.
And sure, some of it might require some skill set development. For the most part, it's kind of like you just have to do these things. And if you do, you set yourself up to put in the work for the electives that are next.
Oh, agreed. Oh, I love that. I love that, and I love you said the word, two words that really just stuck out was discipline. It is that's my word for the year, actually. Discipline. Pick a word for the year, and I'm telling you right now, it has been tough,
Nice.
in a really good way though. But I love the fact, and it's a really good segue into the idea around accountability. Use the word accountability, and the next pillar that you discuss is your connections. So am I safe to assume that when you start to bring in others, there is a perspective or a thoughts around accountability associated with bringing in other people to that journey as well?
100%. I mean, the first practice of the three in the connection pillar is development. Like if you got to do more for others, and you have to be able to develop others. And then as you shift from that into communication, one of the things that I think people have a hard time with is accepting the reality that they need other people.
Mm,
Now, my entire book is about
100%.
own it, right? But my entire book is like, you need to own it. Don't rely on anybody else. And if you're lucky enough to have somebody else, take full advantage of it. However, you own your communication, you own your influencing skills, but other people still have to respond a certain way, and you're going to have to make decisions. So, like the very last practice in influence is one that I think a lot of people aren't going to like. And it's where I say very clearly, you have to meet your boss and their boss 51% of the way or more, or you're
Yeah.
stuck.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Like they are in control. They will make the decisions. You have a choice to decide to go work for somebody else where you can meet them 51% of the way. That's your choice. And a lot of people don't make that choice, or they don't make the choice to actually find the professional contribution in that leader so that they can align to that leader and give them what
Hmm.
it is that they need. So there's a lot of conversation and connections that are around how you can still own
Mm,
your outcome, even though other people are going to be involved because of the decisions that you make along the way.
yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that I love what you said about ownership and meeting your boss 50% away. I think one of the things that people fail to realize, and I'm excited and can't wait to read your book, is that there is ownership in meeting your boss at 51%. You are actually owning the conversation. You're actually owning that portion of the relationship. I always talk to my team and tell them, like, I would rather be a part and actually generate the conversation and the dialogue than to have the dialogue thrusted upon me, right? Or like a new initiative, right? You know how that goes in retail, the retail world. These new initiatives just get thrusted upon you. I was one of those leaders that's like, we'll do the pilot, we'll do the pilot, we'll try it over here. And my team hated it initially, but I'm like, do you not understand what we're doing? We actually have a seat at the table. We were actually kind of being able to control the conversation instead of having the conversation thrusted upon us. So I love what you said about ownership and meeting your boss 51% of the way. A lot of people don't get that, so I'm super excited to read that portion of your book.
Yeah, and Steve, let me throw one thing out there. So I'm gonna give my wife a plug, who's my co-owner on the Well Wisher Company. I live with an executive coach basically, so
Mm,
both fitness and leadership. So you can imagine the lessons that I get. She's the one who taught me. Like I came home one day and I was miserable, and I'm not a miserable person. I'm pretty happy on a regular basis. And my wife said very clearly, she said, "Look, you have two choices. You choose to find the professional contribution in your boss, or
mm,
you choose to leave."
mm-hmm.
And she said very clearly, because he's not going to meet you where you are.
Yeah.
It's not. And he won't until you do. So I did. I met him 75% of the way. And
Mm,
all of a sudden, he started meeting me 75% of the way. And we had an amazing relationship and we had a great career together. So, but again, like you said, like we have to take ownership in it and not expect others to. We might get lucky and have one or two leaders that actually look to meet us where we are. And those are
right.
fantastic leaders, but they're far and few in between.
Very far, very far. And before we move into the plan, one of the things that you I wanted to drill down is that you said a lot of people, and I completely agree with this. A lot of leaders fail to recognize, or even like kind of from a vulnerability standpoint. I'm just going to use that word to be vulnerable enough to realize that, hey Brian, I need connection. I need help. I need your assistance because I don't have it all together, right? I am missing something. I am stuck, right? That vulnerability and leadership are rarely placed in the same sentence. Um, And I know you've been a very successful leader, but dare I say, I think a lot of some of your success has been because you've been able to be vulnerable. Would you agree with that? And
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on that?
100%. I used to joke, when you trip in the street, you gotta like just kind of fall and keep moving and act like it didn't happen.
Yeah,
And that's me. Like I trip on a regular basis and I just keep on moving and act like it never happened. You have to be vulnerable, otherwise you can't take in the inputs.
mm,
And for me, one of the lessons when I wrote this book, because most of the content in the book, it was there. I just needed to get it on paper. But I was reminded of something and learned something in the book. And I remember for years, for the last 10 years or so, I tried to really work on my humility
mm,
and really tried to make sure that it was outward and that people knew it, right? And what I found was, because I wanted to let other people speak first and I wanted other people to have a voice, maybe my voice wasn't as loud as it was in the beginning part of my career. And it was because growing up, I had a very fast track record. I was successful in moving up the ladder, so to speak. And I was perceived to be arrogant,
mm.
right? And what I realized, though, in writing this book is that I wasn't arrogant. I was extremely humble because I was learning like you wouldn't believe behind the scenes. I was reading, I was doing, there were no podcasts back then, but I was reading books, like I was paying attention. I was taking feedback, criticism, no problem. But that was during practice. Like that was behind the scenes. When it was game time, I knew what I was doing because I had been putting in the work. And so I heard a quote. I think it was Kobe said this. Practice like you've never won before, and
Yeah,
play like you've never lost before. I love it. Like
yeah,
so, I was always humble in a way, but I didn't recognize that I was humble. But you have to be, and you don't have to necessarily be humble when you're playing the game. You need to go out and play the game.
yeah,
But hopefully, you have done the work already, so that you know what you need to get done.
yeah. I think that there is strength in humility. There and what I mean is that the act of being vulnerable, but also being able to take in information, and then internalize that information into an outward expression, right? I think about it. I think about, just to kind of further your example of Kobe. I remember there was a scene, not a scene. There was a game when Kobe was probably new in the league, and he was guarding Mike, and they caught the conversation. He was literally asking Mike, like, "What do you do on this play? How do you post
Yep.
up here? How do you do this?" And I love that. I'm like, dude, you're in the middle of a game, right? You're in the middle of a game, and you're guarding, for me, the best player ever, and you are just taking this opportunity to humble yourself and actually still learn. And I think the Mamba mentality kind of came from that. So anyway, I got excited about when you talked about Kobe, because I just that scene just kind of resonated with me.
Well, I think you'll appreciate it. And by the way, Michael is the best player ever.
There
And
you
yes,
go.
he
There you
used to
go.
call Michael at like 2 in the morning, I think, as
Yes.
well. Yeah, hopefully you'll appreciate this one. But at the end of the day, you can't take yourself so seriously, and that's what
Mm,
I had to learn. And I think when you see people, and you know this, you've seen VPs and chief operating officers and you've seen regional directors, you've seen people that take themselves so seriously they look down on other people.
yeah.
And it took me a while to figure out, how do you be humble and confident at the same time? Because you have to be. People
Mm,
follow confident leaders, but you have to be humble to take in the inputs to then be good at what it is that you do. And when you take yourself too seriously, you're letting your ego get the better of you, right?
yeah.
And so I like to joke. When you and I first got on this podcast, you talked about me wearing black, right? Joking around.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's what I wear. I feel better in black, but I don't look down on you if you wear bright colors. But if I take myself real seriously, I would.
Mm,
I ride Harley Davidsons. If I
yeah.
if I took myself so seriously, I would look down on people who chose not to ride a Harley. But when I'm on one, I feel good.
Mm,
Like
mm,
when I drive F-150s, I feel good. So I think it's about accepting, your ego in a positive way, the things that are about you that you enjoy doing, but don't take yourself so seriously
no.
because then you look down on other people and therefore you're going to not take in the input. So
Oh,
I think it's important to not take yourself so seriously.
100% agree. 100% agree. All right, let's move into the plan. Let's move into the plan, right? We spoke about character, connection, and the last part about your book is the plan. Talk about that, and some of the things that, when people start to read the book, what are some of the takeaways that they're actually going to get from it?
It's funny because that was the one thing that went back and forth. Was build your plan going to be the first pillar or the last pillar? We made it the
Mm,
last pillar because we really wanted to cover the content of the work first. Five P's of performance is the beginning of the plan. You have to win at your day job. You have to get to the podium, right? And if you're not at the podium on a regular basis, this book will help you because it's a diagnostic tool to figure out how to get there. But what you have to be able to do is you have to focus on people and product. You have to prioritize it. You have to put processes in place, and that's going to drive your productivity, which delivers performance. It's a lot of P's, it's a lot of words, but it's all in the book and it's outlined and spelled out in terms of what you need to do. But people are first and products a close second. But if you don't prioritize those things and you try to get to it all, at best you'll be a C player. But if you want to be an A player, you got to get to what's most important when it comes to people and product when it's most important. And then you have to create processes and routines, disciplines to get the work done. And I talk about breaking it up into quarters at a time so that way you can be nimble enough to adjust when your plan is or isn't working. And I like to say, it's like defense and playing football. Like a lot of coaches draw up the first few plays because they want to see what the defense does and then they adjust from that point. Your plan's the beginning stage, right? But you need to be flexible enough to adjust. And so that's the I would say half of the build your plan pillar. And then now you're winning at your day job. Now you're at the podium on a regular basis. It's time to go to school. I refer to it as you got to earn to learn. All right, now I'm earning. Now I've created space to learn because I'm winning. And when you win, quote unquote win means you're making it to the podium and you feel good about what you do. Your supervisors tend to leave you alone. That's not necessarily a good thing, but they tend to leave you alone. They shouldn't. And I talk about that in the book as well. But they do. And so that means every mistake you make, you can learn from because nobody's yelling at you for them. But if you're not making it to the podium, they assume that same mistake is the reason why you're not any good. And they give you a hard time and you can't learn from it because you're playing too tight. So the second part of the book is really how you ascend in your role in 3 to 5 years and what that looks like. And part of that practice that, again, people aren't going to like is every new boss, every new role, every new company, every new responsibility, you got to start over.
Starting over.
You got to start proving your character all over again. Now, you can prove your character really quickly if it's inherent in you, but you got to prove it to the boss, the new employee or leaders that now report into you. So my hope is that my expectation is that the build your plan portion is the like tactical work that people can put pen to paper on and start seeing themselves get unstuck in their careers.
Yeah. Excellent. I love. And I was fighting back one of my phrases when I said no one cares, like where you're talking about like every the new level, like dude, no one cares. No one cares. All of the successes that you've had, right? All the people that you've influenced. It's all about like what's in it for me right now. You as my leader, right? I can care less about what you did for Brian. I want to know what you're going to do for me right now. It's a hard truth, but a lot of leaders need to accept it. Well, hold on for a second. I just promoted like 5 different people to to district manager. I can care less. Like, what are you going to do for me right now in this role right now? Go ahead. You were going to say something?
No. Go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
one of the things you said, and it caught me. You said holding things too tight. My oldest brother Stan and I, I remember I was struggling with something, and he and I were talking. He said, Steve, he said you're holding it too tight, and I don't know if you're a golfer or not, but one of the things that they talk about when you hold a club, it's almost like holding a baby bird, right? You want to hold it just enough to not let it go, but you want to hold it tight enough to not crush it. And when I think about our careers, and I think about our journey almost in that similar fashion, and I'm thinking about the roadmap is that you want to hold your career tight, but man, you need and that plan tight, but you need to have some wiggle room in there in order for things to still kind of get in there so that you can make the best of that journey. Would you agree with that thought process?
Yeah, and it's funny you talk about golf. For me, it was always baseball or football. Like if you hold the football too tight, right, you're going to throw the ball. You're not going to throw it with a spiral. And when you play your career, you do your job that way. It's the same thing. You're thinking too much, and you should be thinking when you're learning. You don't think when you're playing. Like at that point, it should be habitual. I remember, I'm not into like I'm not a manifester or all this other kind, but I do believe, in the fact that if you've done the work and you've recognized the work that you need to do, then when it's time to do the work, it's natural. It's like I like to refer to it as like when you drive for many years, you don't think about the red light or the yellow light. You just
Right.
drive. But when you first start, that yellow light, you start to get a little apprehensive. You don't know what to do. And the red light isn't going to turn red, but it eventually just becomes habitual. And so you play less tight when you do the work behind the scenes so that when it's time to actually deliver, it's natural.
Excellent. All right, we're gonna move into this last section. So you've had you've had a big retail career, right? Tons of roles. Um, Now you are moving into this dare I say entrepreneurial space with the Well Wisher Company. Could you talk a little bit about that transition from being that guy to now being this guy? It's different worlds, but there may be some things that translate. There may be some things that don't translate.
Well, I got to give my wife Mel Librach credit because she's been doing it for 10 years. She started the Her Well Wisher 10 years ago, and it turned into the Well Wisher Company, a couple years ago. And watching her go through it, when she decided to not go back to work after having our son, it's not very different. What's different
Mm,
is, you don't have a company funding you, right?
mhm.
You don't have a paycheck that comes in the same way. And so, although I said you have to outwork folks, and I did, I still got a paycheck. Now I have to outwork folks, right, to earn the paycheck. No one's going to give it to me. And so the applications that I put in the book are transferable, and I'm doing the same thing. I got my real estate license not that long ago as yet another way to, right, like fund the work that we're doing and help other folks get into real estate, something that I love to do. But if I didn't outwork folks, I wouldn't have passed that exam. Like I had to put in the work. So what I'm finding is all that I'm doing in my entrepreneurial, in an entrepreneurial way, it's really all the same work. I just don't have a trampoline underneath me to catch me, right? If I don't do the work, I don't have I can't get stuck at this
Mm,
point. I think that's
mm.
probably the biggest difference.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Yeah, you can't. You can't afford to get stuck, right? You can't afford to get stuck. All right, so I want to
Yeah,
close up. Oh,
when
go
that
ahead.
I
Go ahead.
didn't mean to cut
No,
you off.
no,
I was going to
no,
say,
it's
but
okay.
when you earn that paycheck, I remember working for John Hauser at Urban Outfitters, and he used to talk about that. Like, just because you get a paycheck, right?
Mm,
Like you get this steady check coming in every 2 weeks. You don't necessarily own your business with that same level of entrepreneurship. And when I worked for Urban for the 8 years, it was all about entrepreneurship,
mm-hmm,
and you
mm-hmm,
ran it like you owned it.
mm-hmm,
So those
mm-hmm.
8 years definitely helped me, but it's an interesting journey, but looking forward to it.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. All right, as we close up, right? There are a lot of leaders. I know they're gonna read the book, but can you provide um, just some closing, thoughts on for those leaders who are currently stuck, and give them some, give them some of that retail leaders, roadmap perspective on, some of. No, here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to give them some of that early morning walk. Um, David Goggins of retail perspective right now that they need to hear right now. Go for it.
Well, I end every single run talking about get up and go. And that's what I say to my son every single morning. And the first thing I would say is stop hitting the snooze button.
Mm,
Just stop. Like, just stop. Get up. Put 2 feet on the floor, put one foot in front of the other, and walk in the direction that you want to be every single day. Some
mm,
people, they say, like, one day at a time. I don't have, no, every minute, right? Like every minute at a time. Like take advantage of the time that you have and don't just assume you have tomorrow. Like take advantage. And so for me, that's the biggest thing is you have to walk in the direction that you want to be. If you're not, you're going to stay stuck. And I think, yes, the book will help with all of the, specifics and the tactics and everything else. But you have to wake up with the mentality that you're going to win the day.
mm,
And the best way to do that is to avoid the snooze button. I'm still trying to get my son to learn that one.
mm,
And just get up and go and walk in the direction that you want to be. And if you do that, you're much more likely to end up where you want versus wandering around aimlessly, hoping you'll end up where you want. Hope is
mm,
not a two words that it's funny. We're called the Well Wisher Company, but I don't like the word wish. And the reason is we decided we were going to call the company Well Wisher because my wife's her well wisher in support of her and allies of her. But we want to make wishing action orientated. We want to help people, right? We want to
Mm-hmm.
wish well on you, but actually do something for you. Whereas most people wish something was different. Well,
Yes.
guess what? That means you're not happy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
why wish something was different? Just walk in the direction that you want to be, and you'd be surprised how often you end up where you want to be.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what you just said. Wake up with the mentality that you're going to win today. Wake up with the mentality that you are going to win today. When is the book? When does the book come out for everybody that's going to be listening to this, whether it's on the video or also on the audio podcast?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. So March 12th.
March 12th.
It's going to be 11 months, 11 months of work, 35 years of blood, sweat, and tears. But March 12th, it will drop and be available to everybody.
So Brian Librach, I want to thank you so much for being on Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy. I'm telling you what, I'm excited about the book, but here's the other thing I'm excited about. I'm excited to be a part of this journey with you, and more importantly, that I'm going to consider ourselves friends, and that we're going to be attached at the hip as we continue down and changing the retail industry. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Steve, for having me. I appreciate you, sir.